All right, I'm going to pick up from there. So the recycling issue. So what is the solution to that? Like, where are we headed with
As
creating waste, and
as
why don't we figure out how to use cardboard more? Because apparently cardboard is really a useful item for recycling.
well, there you go. Uh, but that that requires a whole infrastructure change, right? It's going to be costly. How do you get like 98% of people behind something like that? But most people aren't aware of the problem to start with, or if they are, they're not aware of the magnitude of the problem. Uh, I agree 100%. Paper is a renewable resource. But people go on and on about cutting down forests, but if you cut down a bunch of trees and replant the land from which they were harvested, then in 20 years, you've got more trees, at least modest sized one. And in 50 years, you've got a whole forest again. So, yeah, we ought to stop the use of plastic and go back to paper packaging for sure.
But that's not going to happen because the oil industry relies on plastic now as part of it.
Well, it's not that the oil industry relies on plastics, it's that that's where some of their product goes. Plastics are made from petroleum products. And and with the vast quantities that are in use today, I don't know what fraction of the oil industry's revenue is due to stuff that goes into making plastics, but it's part of the mix. So you've got these institutional barriers, which can only be broken down if politicians have the will to do so, and we don't, do we?
Well, the politicians, unfortunately, are largely owned. Um, I was going to say one thing that's kind of interestingly parallel to the plastic issue and trying to use things like cardboard are, effectively the ultra processed food and the relationship to obesity and type 2 diabetes.
Well, we can just keep bringing up intractable problems one right after the other if we wish. Yes, that's definitely a problem.
Why was food engineered by a cigarette industry, and now the foods are so addictive that people don't even feel full. They just need to keep consuming food, and now they're being put on medications that ordinarily wouldn't have to be put on, blood pressure meds, cholesterol meds, diabetes meds. So now we've got one huge lucrative industry benefiting from the ultra processed food industry.
Well, there's another case where we did it to ourselves, didn't we? You know, when I was growing up, my mom was a good mom, and she was a decent cook. She was a good cook. She fed us well, but she bought fresh foods. In other words, to avoid eating processed foods, you got to eat fresh foods. And to do that, you have to go to the grocery store every day. This is exactly what people do in in many countries around the world. Uh, you can point to a few. Some that come to mind to me are places like India, some other Asian countries where there are huge food markets with every kind of thing you can imagine. And you can go down there and get your fresh food anytime you want. And it's good. It's good fresh food. And the trouble is fresh food spoils. So you have to eat it right away. And that means you have to go back to the market and get some more. This is a daily thing for uh, many people in the world. They have to it's a part of their lives. They get up, they go down to the market, and they get today's food and they bring it back and they eat it. Or maybe they buy a couple of days worth. But they definitely don't buy stuff and stick it in a refrigerator for 2 weeks until you got fucking mold coming out of, every orifice in there. And they don't have freezers where you can throw shit in there and leave it for months and thaw it out later, and maybe you can eat it. Uh, Another thing is that when you buy fresh food, you buy what you need to eat, and you wind up eating most of it. But we throw away so much food, processed food, because it comes in these huge packages that you can't eat all of the stuff. Large portions of everything. Go to a restaurant and try to order something that doesn't have 1,500 calories in it just for their medium-sized dish. Uh, when we eat out, we eat these huge meals because that's the way they're served. And you're right, our bodies have been corrupted by chemicals, by overloading us with sweets and fats that rewire our brains to where even when we think we're getting full, we can't stop eating. It's like, finish your plate or you're not going to get any dessert. What the fuck? Dessert? All I wanted was, a little bit of protein, a little bit of starch, and the majority of my meal is vegetables. I wasn't even thinking about dessert, but I can't stop thinking about it now.
What about the way that ingredients are actually not even what sometimes, like, if something says corn or something says wheat, like those have been like sitting and soaking in pesticides, and they don't have to comment that in the ingredients list. I saw an ingredient recently called mold inhibitor. Some food had mold inhibitor, and then they lace it with sodium. Even canned soup, has like 3 days of supply of sodium in it. I mean, so when did we get to the point where there's part of our food supply isn't food at all? It's food. It's stuff that's to make our food engineered so it'll last and have a shelf life for a million years. Like, and the other thing is like, there's so many things that alternatives to this, but people have become so addicted to this thing.
Yeah, I live close to, one of these big grocery stores. It's not a super duper store, but I can go to one place and get pretty much anything I need. The trouble is that all of that stuff is processed, a lot of it, uh, packaged, preservatives. So even though I can go to a store and get fresh food, and in principle, I'm retired now, so I mean I've got the time. I could even go down there every day and get food, but I would still be faced with all of this uh, unhealthy stuff. It's hard to buy healthy food anymore. Uh, but people used to do that all the time, and the way it got where it is exceedingly slowly and gradually, to where over decades these changes took place, and we really weren't paying attention about the cumulative effects. This is the insidious nature of long-term gradual change. You get used to what's going on. And by the time you look around, you say, how the fuck did we get here? Well, slowly is the answer.